Hello, folks. Welcome to the very first Thursday Thoughts of 2022. We are back. We took December off to enjoy some holiday time and some family time, but I'm excited to get back to it, man. How you living, Kevin?
I can't believe it's only been 2 months since we've done this. I feel like we've had such a long hiatus, partially because we have made so many great relationships because of our Thursday thoughts.
Hmm.
You know, how many of our speakers are we now working with? How many of our viewers are we working with?
Right.
You know, we've even, some vendors, we've partnered with some companies. I mean, we've made some great relationships off of Thursday thoughts. So we're
Indeed.
keeping busy. And it feels like it's been so long since we've done this. I'm so excited to be back. I can't believe here we are, season 3.
Yeah, and we have some guests lined up a couple months in advance, so it's gonna be fun. I'm
We've
looking
got some
forward to it.
great
But
guests.
yeah, indeed. But again, thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you're liking, sharing, and we're not gonna wait. We're gonna get right into it. Thursday thoughts. Welcome everyone to another episode of Thursday Thoughts. I am your co-host Zach James with my good buddy here, Kevin Homer, coming live from his basement. We're actually both coming live from our basements. You can see he has a kid, so he got the fun stuff on the back wall.
I
Uh,
cut it out the bet. I have a kid and a kindergarten teacher for a wife. So yeah, the back can't avoid these backgrounds. But hey, I mean, Thursday thoughts. I can't believe we're in season 3. I mean, Thursday thoughts. It started from our basement. You know,
yeah,
we hit the pandemic, which we're going to try not to talk about too much in season 3. We did enough of that in season 1 and 2.
right.
But the pandemic started, and we couldn't do our lunch and learns, which we always did, and we had the idea of, hey, for a couple months, why don't we try to do something online? And I love the way that it's grown. I mean, it's, over the past 2 seasons, more viewers. We've been able to hit it live on more platforms, right? We're now coming at you live from YouTube, from Facebook, and from LinkedIn. Of course, you can always view this presentation and all of our presentations later. Shouldn't even call it a presentation. It's a conversation, right? We're not here to present. We're here to converse and chat. And please engage if you are watching us live. Make sure you leave some comments. We'll get them. We'll put them up on the screen. We'll talk about them. But enough rambling from me. Zach, what are we doing today? Who are we talking to?
Yeah, so we have an awesome guest, someone who I met over the pandemic. So again, we haven't met in person, and it seems a lot of relationships have started that way over these last few years. So we're going to be diving into relationship building and how folks do that. And I couldn't think of a better person to have on the show as a guest to talk about that than my new friend Emilie Carlino. So Emilie is a workforce development specialist with over 10 years experience in higher education and corporate settings. Currently, she is the manager of Partner Career Services and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Link, a nonprofit organization dedicated to serving as talent champions for local employers and job seekers relocating into the Lehigh Valley. Emilie has a passion for providing education, professional development, and career advising services for diverse professionals. She holds undergraduate degrees in education and science, along with a graduate degree in health education with a concentration in in community interventions. In addition to her professional experience, Emilie is also a career and professional development coach and consultant, and owns her own business in the Lehigh Valley focused on helping women grow and develop professionally to reach their career goals. So again, super excited to introduce you all to Emilie today. How are you, Emilie?
I'm good. Hey, Zach. Hey, Kevin. You guys couldn't see me a minute ago, but I was jamming in the background to your intro video.
Oh yeah. You were digging the vibes.
Yeah, the music really got me going.
Now I wish we had seen it. We may have to roll it back at the end here.
I was definitely doing the head bob a little bit.
Nice. That's our goal. We want to wake people up and get them excited to chat and have these discussions. And I'm super excited because I'm a networking guy. I've been a networking guy since the day I stepped out of college, probably even before. So I love having these sorts of chats and chatting with other people who understand the importance of relationships and how to build relationships. And I think so many times, a lot of folks, especially when they either get into business for themselves or working for companies, that seems to be an area where everyone can improve at. And especially if you own your own business or you're pushing some sort of venture forward, you have to always be improving in that space to build relationships and to push and grow your business. So again, looking forward to chatting with you. And wanted you to give people just a brief little overview of what you do, because I know I read your bio, but I'm sure you can give it more justice and kind of tee this conversation off.
Yeah, well, that was a great introduction. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, you hit the nail on the head. So, career advising, professional development, education, they're all passions of mine. We're kind of going to talk a little bit about like passions and values and how sort of infusing what you're passionate about as part of your networking approach is really the key to kind of like networking authentically. Zach, you mentioned you and I met over the pandemic. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how networking is different because of COVID, how networking is different in a virtual environment, why being authentic and really kind of putting not your best foot forward, because I've heard that a lot. People say you have to put your best foot forward, but I don't really like that saying, because I feel like when we start to talk about authenticity and putting your best foot forward, that's not necessarily putting your most true foot forward in terms of showing up and being present and really being who you are and engaging with the people that you're talking to. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I've done a lot of different talks in the community with Lehigh Valley professionals, been involved in a lot of different groups. So I'm just really happy to be here. Hope to see some engagement from the people listening. And again, just really excited to have this conversation about the importance of really building relationships and not just kind of like adding contacts to your Rolodex. I don't know if anybody even has a Rolodex anymore, but adding contacts to your phone or, things like that.
Indeed. So I'll pose this question to you, because we kind of titled this Relationship Building in 2022, because, it's changed a bit. Like, what's kind of your overall view on how it's different now than maybe it was 2 years ago?
I think it's harder. I think it's more difficult. I think there's a lot of people out there that struggle with feeling isolated, especially if you're more of an introvert. Clearly, that's not me, but I'm very extroverted and outgoing. But it's hard to connect with people. First of all, it's hard for introverts to connect with people in an in-person environment. And now, because of the pandemic, and now we're shifting to kind of like what's next. And, we're seeing things go back to virtual just when we thought we might be kind of coming out of it. Right. And so I think it becomes harder to build those relationships and to connect with people. We can't do it sort of the same way that we used to. And so, really being, I don't want to use the word selective, but I like the word intentional, really networking with intention and spending some time to reflect on kind of like, what's important to you, what do you value, who do you want to connect with, and then sort of aligning yourself with people who are going to help you, drive your passions forward or help you with your business. And so kind of really spending some time to think about, all right, who am I? Like, what is my brand? What is my story? Like, what am I all about? Whether it's with my business or, I'm trying to connect with people because I'm job searching. So spending that time to first kind of focus on yourself and then looking for opportunities to be more intentional about who you connect with. And more importantly, why, right? Why we connect with them. Zach, why did we connect? Why did we stay connected, right? There's reasons behind when you meet people, whether that relationship's going to grow and continue to grow and develop. And there's relationships, that don't grow and develop. And so I think when we're not authentic and when we're not genuine and we're not putting in the effort to make connections, that's when kind of those relationships get like stale and we don't see as much growth as we would like.
Right. And that was a key word that you mentioned right there, was authentic. And we had to identify what you think other people want you to be versus who you really are. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's funny. I think that a lot of times we all have like two different personalities, right? We have like a professional self and then maybe more of like a personal self when we're more relaxed and we're more comfortable. Being authentic is about being true to who you are. being true to your values. You're probably going to hear me say that word a lot. I do values-based coaching, so values is really important to me, but being true to who you are. And wouldn't it be great if we could show up at work and bring our true selves with us? So I think it's like finding a balance between, not necessarily just doing what other people think you're supposed to do. You show up at work, you do your 9 to 5, and then you leave, and there's kind of no engagement or passion there. But bringing a little bit of yourself into your work, I think, is really, really important. The other piece of that too is when we start to think about purpose, and I say the word passion a lot too. Now more than ever, that's so important to people professionally, people in their businesses, right? Like, why are people going to follow you in business if they're connected to your purpose, if they're passionate about what you're passionate about? The Great Resignation is a thing. People are leaving, people are quitting. Everybody's going to find their purpose. And so I think really, there's a statistic floating around out there, like 9 out of 10 people, I think it's as high as 9 out of 10 now, would leave a higher paying job to take a position for less money if they felt more fulfilled. The same thing kind of goes with our relationships, right? Kevin, Zach, if I talk to you and I feel good after we talk and we connect and, we really kind of on a deeper level, we align with our missions, what we want to do, help people build relationships, right? That's why we're connecting today. That to me is much more powerful than just, connecting for the sake of connecting.
Right.
So it's about finding the purpose and the reason behind why you make connections.
Right. No, that makes total sense. And the one other thing we had on there, and I'll let Kevin pop up with this. I'll ask you this, Kevin. What does networking mean to you? Like, what's the Kevin Homer definition of networking?
Well, I actually love that the title of this conversation that we're having is Keys to Relationship Building and not Keys to Networking. Because when I think about networking, I picture the business card exchange where everybody's going, and even though we call it an exchange, we know that everybody in that room is there to hand out business cards and not to collect business cards. I'm there to sell myself at a networking event. And that is not how you form relationships. And, Emilie, you keep throwing out some great words, purpose and passion, authenticity and everything. Those are great buzzwords. And those are the words that I feel go into relationship building and not as much into networking and business card exchanges and some of those buzzwords. So, not everybody may break it down quite as much as I am with that thought process. But I think in order to be a successful networker, you need to think about that R word, the relationship building. And, when that's where the purpose and passion, everything comes in. If you're there to sell, if everybody's trying to sell, no one's going to sell anything. But if you try to form genuine relationships, that's where eventually, hopefully, it becomes, a fruitful opportunity for everybody. But, don't push it too hard. Let it form a little bit more naturally.
Right.
And I also think, go ahead, Emily.
I was going to say, and you have to care, right? Like, it's not just, I'm connecting to you because this is going to, I have to, or because this is going to be good for my business, but I'm connecting to you because I genuinely care about you as another human being, because I genuinely care about what you're doing in your life. When I talk to people about relationship building, I often ask them to kind of pose these questions to themselves and say, like, who are the key relationships in my life? Right. And you can do this both professionally and personally, because sometimes, it's a good exercise to do at home as well. But who are the key relationships in my life? And ask yourself, how can I deepen them? Right. So like you were saying, it's really more about what can I do versus what other people can do for me.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
No, what are you going to say, Kevin?
I was going to say, we were talking earlier about, how has networking or relationship building changed, from 2 years ago to today. And it used to be, if you walked into an event, you went into a room and there were 100 people there. Well, you're not talking to 100 people. You're forming that small group. I'm talking to one of you. I'm talking to two of you. That allows you to create that conversation, and start to build a real relationship. When you pop into Zoom and there's 100 people in Zoom, chances are you're talking to 100 people in Zoom. You're not getting that, and I know Zoom has the functionality for the breakout sessions and everything, but a lot of times those aren't utilized. So it is a lot harder. It is more of a challenge, to not just be there to sell when you're talking to an entire room. Zach, I know you're great at this, that, you go into that room with 50 or 100 people in Zoom, but then you create your own breakout session later and you have that one-on-one conversation with some of those people who maybe had, seemed to be somebody that you wanted to form a deeper relationship with. And, and that's the opportunity. I think what's the follow-up from that?
Right. And to give my sort of 2 cents towards the networking element, I almost think like networking is like, it's the precursor to relationship building. Like, because sometimes I can go into that space, and again, networking is really just to know who you are in general. Maybe know what you do, and what your needs are and stuff like that. And then that one-on-one allows us to really drill down and start to build a relationship, and to discover, where that relationship can go and what those possibilities are. And I tell folks, you kind of mentioned, we're headed in this direction a little bit, about like, your top personal connections and your top business connections, and relationships, I'll call them. It's an interesting thing to know that if they're not family, those people at some point, you didn't know them from a can of paint. and you had to actually meet them and grow and foster relationships to the point where it got to where it is now. So I always go into any sort of connection thinking, not really holding back, knowing where the future could end up and how far that relationship would go. You really never know. And to that point, Emilie, we were talking earlier, preparing for this, and you compared connections to contacts. And I would love to chat a little bit about this list that you created, because it just seems so awesome and so on point. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the two?
Yeah, thanks. And I think Kevin hit the nail on the head too. Like, when we think about networking, I've had people like relate networking to like, oh, it's like this dirty word, right? Relationship building, like, oh, like it makes me uncomfortable, right? And I think that's because sometimes we approach it the wrong way. And a lot of people, when they get scared or nervous about networking, that big room that Kevin was talking about, when you walk in and there's like 100 people, and they're all talking, and you're like, I don't know who to talk to and why, right? I think that can be really, really intimidating. And a lot of times that's sort of like, when you prepare for a networking event, a list of names versus a list of people, right? So really kind of like putting the humanism back and making these real, connections, not necessarily going into a networking event blind, especially like a Zoom call. If you have an attendee list, you can absolutely research who's going to be there and see if there's somebody, who you're inspired by, somebody you want to get to know, somebody who's doing something really cool or like awesome that you want to get involved with. You can kind of do a little bit of the legwork and treat the people that you are meeting, even if it's virtually, like people, that you want to be connected to, not just like contacts or little boxes or chat bubbles. When we first started networking again, a little bit when things got better early on in the year and we had a few more in-person events, one of the first things I said was, it's so nice to see chat bubbles come to life, right? Because we're looking at Zoom boxes and we're, talking to people on LinkedIn, or, there's so many different platforms. So to kind of see those people come to life is always a really rewarding experience. I think when you look at it in terms of contacts versus connections, contact is very, very impersonal, and a connection is something that has a little bit more meaning. And that's really what it takes, to build relationships, is to find that meaning, to find that commonality, the core alignment, of your values or your mission. A lot of times networking can feel really robotic or transactional. Kevin, you mentioned the business card exchange, right? And I think when people do that, it's kind of like, here's my business card. Here's my business card. Okay, like we're just going to collect 50 more business cards. I have no intention of ever using these. They're going to go in a drawer in my house. But when you do it more intentionally, it can become more of a knowledge exchange versus a business card exchange. So like, hey, tell me about what you're doing. Oh, that's really cool. Tell me about what you're doing. Hey, like we might be able to collaborate here on this, right? And it's from starting those conversations that, the best businesses, ideas, projects, all of that potential for collaboration. And it can't happen if you go into network. You go to these events with that mindset about like, I need somebody to help me with this, or I need somebody to do this for me. The way I view relationship building and networking is it's about listening. It's not necessarily about talking, and it's about actively listening. You want to hear people's stories, and that's where you're going to find those opportunities to connect, sort of like past that superficial level, right? Like, I'm Emily, this is what I do. Okay. But what do you care about, right? What inspires you? What motivates you? So asking questions, that's really what leads to those more meaningful conversations. And then, if you have those more meaningful conversations and you can connect with people on a little bit of a deeper level, that's when relationship building becomes mutually beneficial instead of just exclusively beneficial. And, back to the topic of authenticity, I think you can always tell when people are not being authentic, right? Like you kind of just know, whether it's like, they come across a little skeezy or like they say something or they're pushing too hard. I think, Kevin, you mentioned that, like, my first reaction isn't to lean into a person like that. It's to lean back, like, okay, so I think we have to remember to take time to pause, to ask questions and to listen to what other people are saying.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I know when it comes to sales, one of the things that I learned in the very beginning of my career was instead of trying to tell people what they need, try to ask the right questions so that they figure out themselves what they need. And I feel which has always been successful for me. I always liked that approach. Ask the right questions, let them figure it out. And I feel like that can apply to relationship building also. Exactly what you just said, Emily. Instead of going in strong and talking about yourself and talking about everything, ask questions, show that you're interested in them. That doesn't mean you have to necessarily have your sales hat on while you're doing it, but when you ask those questions, that's what's going to help form that deeper relationship.
And what I thought was what popped in my mind when you were talking earlier, Emily, in reference to cars just sitting somewhere. So like, this is probably the smallest box of about 4 boxes of cards I have sitting here. Connections going back probably 5 or 6 years. And I keep them because I do plan on at some point actually logging them all and sending, a newsletter and doing my thing. But they all actually started as genuine connections. Like all those folks I either had a really good relationship with at meeting them the first time and kept it because I followed up. But they do end up just kind of becoming storage.
There's a lot of people in those boxes.
Emily, you asked at the beginning if people still use Rolodexes. Apparently the answer is no. We have now upgraded to cigar boxes.
Cigar boxes, yeah, that's the key.
That is the preferred method of contact, of connection saving. Just put it in my cigar box.
Indeed. Now
I have a shoe box, if that helps. It's not a cigar box, but it is a shoe box, and very similar. It's not next to me, so I can't show you guys, but I do have one that has a bunch of cards in it. So that's funny.
For me, the shoe box is too tall. Like I'm losing too much space that way. So like the cigar box is nice and tiny, about the height of a business card. It's perfect for cards.
Emily, if I think I wear bigger shoes than you do, so if you ever run out of space, let me know. I'll send some new boxes your way.
Oh yeah, unfortunately, and my husband will echo this, I have way too many shoe boxes.
Okay.
Because I have way too many pairs of shoes.
Fair.
So is that when you buy new shoes, is that a business write-off if you're using the boxes for your business cards?
I will have to ask my accountant that question.
I was gonna say, we may have to get an accountant on our next Thursday Thoughts and see what they think.
See, this is where Thursday Thoughts goes. We have really unique ideas on how to do better on our taxes.
Yeah, maybe we'll design a box for business cards, and there you go.
I love this relationship that we just built in the last 25 minutes. I think we've got some good conversations coming after this.
It's already bred new business ventures. To keep the convo going, I know we wanted to jump into a little bit about understanding core values, Emily. So I would love for you to kind of lead us through this chat a little bit about how to identify your core values and what that really means.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have enough time to dive super deep into this. One of my favorite things to talk about, I do values-based networking. My coaching style is values-based. A lot of what I teach and practice is heavily grounded and founded in emotional intelligence. So I think it's really important to be able to be self-reflective. Sometimes when I tell people that, they're like, oh, I have to get in touch with my emotions. Like, ugh, like, what is this? Like, I don't want to do that. But I think in order to be successful, in business, successful professionally, you really have to understand who you are and what's important to you, right? Like, what drives you? Why do you get out of bed every day? Going back to that whole like great resignation and finding your purpose and what's your why, a lot more conversations are being had about this. But your core values, really, it's kind of like our roadmap for life, or moral compass, or how we make decisions, right? When we sit down, we think about what's important to us. Again, you can look at it through the lens of personally, like, these are things I value in terms of family, relationships, love, trust, faith, church, but whatever it may be. But professionally, you're looking at things like, okay, what is important to me in a job, in a culture, in an environment, right? In my business, what do I want to project? What do I want to be known for? Examples like, so some of the things that I value, right? When I did the values exercise, and you can find a values list on Google, like you just Google it, you can get a list of core values, and then you can kind of go through this exercise where you try to take the big list and break it down to maybe about 4 or 5 words that really, really resonate with you. So I'll share with you my core values, and I've done this exercise a bunch of times throughout my career, are education, creativity, making a difference, gratitude, and being a part of cultures that prioritize inclusivity and belonging, right? Those are some kind of like non-negotiables for me throughout my career. And I've actually left organizations because they didn't align with my values anymore. And I think this, that's important to start to think about, like, when you identify, like, what are your values? Like, you can use these to help you make professional decisions. In terms of business, it might be, who do I want to work for, or who do I want to work with, right? Does this person align with me and my business and my mission and my vision? Like, are we going to be able to do good things together? Or, on the flip side of that, if, for your job search strategy, when you're building relationships, when you're looking at companies, when you're on LinkedIn searching for people you might want to have informational interviews with, you have to pay attention, because you have to really go back to those things I said about listening and learning about the person, because you don't want to align yourself with somebody who doesn't connect to those values, right? Like, you don't want to end up working for an organization where you're like, this is just not a good fit for me. Like, these people, maybe they're, they're practicing without integrity, or maybe flexibility is something that's really important to you and they don't offer that in their, work environment. Maybe some of their practices and policies are like actually causing you to burn out, or maybe they have, whether it's a boss, a manager, a potential client, a company in general, like if you're noticing sort of like toxic traits and negativity, that might be something that you want to pause again and take a step away from. So I think understanding your values really help you connect more authentically to people, right? And it's, again, it's kind of like when when somebody is leading with, their most authentic self. I think when people are genuine, that kind of shines through. And I think that that's important for our own personal growth and development, and also too for where we end up working in terms of an organization and who we want to work with, right?
Right.
And you guys know you're in business, so you might have had to make some difficult decisions sometimes in terms of, thanks for approaching me. I appreciate your interest, but I don't think I want to work together. And I always tell people, like, that's okay. That's, I would empower people to start having those conversations. Like, I wish you best of luck. I don't think we're in alignment. Please go your separate way. Like, thank you very much. Have a nice day.
No, you're absolutely right. We're not in the business of turning away people, but we've definitely had those conversations where, yes, we've had to make some decisions. This is somebody we're comfortable working with, for the exactly what you just said, Emily. I mean, you hit the nail on the head.
Right. We're in the middle of a conversation like that right now. So yeah, no stranger to it. And I also want to touch on value from another perspective. When we're talking about value, I always make that the core of my networking, but from the value add standpoint, what value can we give to someone else? And just kind of how you mentioned before, listening to whoever you're meeting to understand if it's a good fit for you. That's key. But I also like listening from the stance of understanding, how can I help them? How can I provide value to someone? Because that's my key to networking and building relationships, is giving value, whether that value be in the form of a referral or some advice, or even as simple as connecting them to a blog that I saw that could help them through solving a problem. I'm always looking to give value. And I think that's one of the core elements in building a relationship with someone. What's your take on that, Emily?
I agree. And I think it goes back to saying, it's not what are you going to do for me? It's what can I do for you? And so when you show up and you're genuine and you're compassionate and you really care about listening to a person's story, how can I help you? What can I do? And I think it's important too that when you're like having these conversations with people and you're meeting people, I'm sure you've all probably heard, what's your elevator pitch? In terms of like creating and drafting those, I kind of really prefer the term like impact statement, right? Like, what's your impact statement, right? What do you want people to know about you? And in terms of kind of like taking it back to, even on your resume, you have like a professional summary, right? So your professional summary, your elevator pitch, your impact statement really should contain like 3 parts, right? The first one, when you're talking to people that you're meeting for the first time, is a high level overview of your industry and professional experience, right? We have to communicate that, like, oh, what industry are you? Oh, I'm marketing. Oh, I'm accounting, right? So kind of talking about your industry level and your experience. The middle part of that really is all about the skills and qualities you have that add value. Right. So when you're talking about yourself in terms of like thinking about your personal brand, we want to share areas that we know that we add value. Right. I'm, a great connector and relationship builder. I'm self-motivated. Right. I'm dedicated and hardworking. Sharing things. I always go the extra mile for my clients, right? Sharing the ways that you see that you add value. And then the last part of that really is your passion statement. Just in terms of like, it's great to learn about people and what they do. But when I'm talking about people, like, I always like to know, like, what are you passionate about? I think relationship building authentically at its core is about sharing your passions and then finding other people that get excited by them, right? It's like we think about when you're a kid and you're like, hey, you want to be my friend? Like, I like Legos. Me too, right? And then you guys are like best friends. Like, I have kids, so I can see these scenarios like actually probably have played out before. Or, like finding that common ground and then looking for ways to build on it, I think is really, really important. Just in terms of like thinking about, all right, like, what do you want people to know about you? I know Zach threw that slide up a second ago, and I think it all goes back to your core values, right? Like, what do you want people to know about you? Like, this is what's important to me. This is who I am, right? Those are your core values. And we have to connect to them in order to be authentic. Otherwise, we're kind of just falling back into that, like, we do and we say what other people want, right? Or like we kind of like put on the mask or put on the act, so to speak, but we're not really living and breathing and doing things, that are true to who we are.
Right.
And so, when we start sharing things like this is what we're passionate about and we're able to motivate and inspire people, that's how people are going to follow you, whether it's within your business or behind a project, or start to get some traction with recruiters when you're job searching, just as part of your strategy. That's what people are going to buy into. Like, wow, like this person's really engaged and passionate. How can I learn more? About all the things that they're going to be able to give me. So I think it's important to think of those 3 elements. What's important to you? Who are you in terms of your values? What do you love most about what you do in terms of your passions? And then what skills and strengths do you have that you can share with other people? And I think it's like flipping the script on like the classic approach. Like, this is what I do. This is what I want from you, to kind of like, this is who I am. This is how I can help you.
Right. And then when I'm networking, and again, I know it doesn't come as natural to everybody, but I do all of that with the kind of goal of really making someone happy. Even happy listening to me. Like, there's a smile on my face. I'm beaming. I'm using inflection. I can make you excited if it seems like I'm excited about what I do, and I'm excited to tell you. So it's even another step onto all those great things you mentioned. Is you got to believe it. You got to really put that energy into how you're presenting your core values and what you do and what you bring to the table, because just that alone will resonate in others. They'll see that energy, that spunk, and now they want to learn more, or they want you to keep talking, versus you've been in those networking sessions where someone's talking, you just want them to be quiet so you can start saying what you want to say. Like, you want people to want to hear more, and you do that through your inflection and the energy you give out.
And I think it's so important after you have that elevator pitch, or Emily, I love what you said, changing it to an impact statement. I think it's so important to then go practice it, because anybody can memorize a statement. I don't care if you came up with the statement yourself. I don't care if I wrote it for you and you're just reciting it because I told you this is, some good stuff to say. But anybody can memorize their elevator pitch or impact statement. But you got to practice bringing that passion and authenticity into it and making it sound like you're not reading from a script or reciting a script that you memorized, but it's actually something that you truly, truly believe in. So go practice it. Even if you're in a networking event and you walk up to someone and you realize, you know what, there's nothing here, this is not the right contact for me, just do it anyway. Make it as authentic as you can. Practice that inflection, that passion, making it seem genuine and not reciting, the 30-second speech that you memorized the night before.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you said about, making sure that you bring the little bit of energy behind it, right? Because it is nerve-wracking. And the same thing goes like if you're interviewing, right? And it's kind of like that dreaded, oh, tell me about yourself question. And you're like, I have no idea how to answer that. Well, figure out how to answer it by using that guideline, right? What's important to you, who are you as a person? What do you want potential clients or potential employers to know about you? And always lead with your passion, right? And I love when people tie in those passion statements. And I love when it doesn't sound robotic, like you can always tell, when people are nervous. So I think that's why it's important to practice it on your friends or your family or your dog or your cat or whatever. And just, you have to believe it too. And I think that's where a little bit of that confidence comes in. And sometimes it can be a little bit difficult for introverts or people who are a little bit more shy. But if you spend that time really, make those strength lists, do Strength Finder. There's tons of different exercises out there. 16 Personalities is a good online quiz. I know I think it's Marcus Buckingham has the standout assessment that's free right now. Online, you can take that, go out and research different assessments to help you kind of identify your strengths, right? Do values exercises to help you identify your values. And if you put that work in to kind of really like putting it down on paper and Kevin, like you said, like believing it, right? Like, oh, like I am good at this. Like, yes, these are my skills. I think it can be really valuable because if you're confident in what you're saying, then that's going to come across. Like if you're talking to someone and you're like, I'm good at time management and, I'm good at communication, but like you're kind of like meek and timid and you're not, really bringing the energy. They might kind of be like, well, are you good at those things? So I think it's really important to get comfortable with, the things that you're good at, the skills and the value that you have, and to recognize it so that you can share it. And on the flip side too, with building relationships, I think it's important to mention that, get comfortable with the things that you're not as good at. And when you're connecting to people, find people who shine in those areas and, figure out how you can work together. Just in terms of like it was funny. I was talking to Zach and I was like, oh, well, you're better at social media than me. Like my kids are better at social media than me. Right. Thinking about like, this is the value that I have and this is the value that somebody else has. And like when you can join them together, just, all the great things that can happen from finding collaborations based on building meaningful relationships.
Yeah. Awesome. And I'm just going to interject as we're coming a little bit towards the end of our discussion here. For anybody who's watching live right now on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, please use the comments. Feel free to ask a question. Feel free to tell us about yourself. If you want to type out your impact statement and tell us who you are and, why you're watching today. Feel free to please, even if you're introverted, this is an easy way to network with us and, get your message out there, get your questions answered. So as we're coming to an end, please, feel free to comment with any questions or statements you want to give us.
Indeed, indeed. And just to kind of do like a little bit of a recap and to sum up this elevator pitch, we had these kind of just bullets about really perfecting it. And the first one was to keep it brief. Your elevator pitch, that's why they even call it that. The premise is if you were in an elevator with somebody, well, hopefully you're not in the elevator for 10 minutes. So don't have a 10-minute elevator pitch. You want to keep it kind of brief. As Emilie said, you want to mention your skills and that value proposition, what you're bringing to the table. It's really important to be compelling. That's one of the things that I think I do well when I'm networking is to be really compelling about what I'm sharing with someone. And of course, like our favorite point guard of all time, Allen Iverson, has said, you got to practice. You got to practice, practice, practice. And that's how you really become good at providing your elevator pitch. If you're not good at being compelling naturally, that practice is how you get better. Once you kind of have it internalized, now your personality can come out more and you can embellish and you can really, take it up a notch. So it's very key to kind of focus on those things as you craft and grow your elevator pitch.
I'm going to call you out a little bit, Zach. I don't think Allen Iverson was pushing practice. I believe he was doing the opposite and questioning.
I'm just saying you said the word practice a lot. I was remixing it, Kevin.
But for once, I'm going to say don't listen to Iverson. Yes, you need to practice. We are talking about practice, and it's not silly.
Definitely do. Now, Emilie, any parting words overall in this world of relationship building and what folks need to do?
Yeah, I think, because you guys started talking about practice, practice is really important, but I think it's about progress, not perfection. I think perfection is like the opposite of authenticity, right? Because sometimes we feel the pressure to kind of seem like we're perfect, right? And act like we're perfect and we have it all together. Anybody that tells you they have it all together all the time is absolutely 100% lying to you. So perfection, we're all humans, and just by being a human, we're imperfect. So, pick one thing that you heard in today's presentation and work on it. Don't try to do everything, and just take it, one day at a time, one step at a time, one relationship at a time. And if you approach it that way, you'll start to see a growth within your network.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emilie, for dropping some knowledge on us and our viewers. We had some folks on Facebook and on LinkedIn chiming in, and people who are watching, whether you're watching this live currently or you see this later, you can still send us questions. You can still send anything in. You can reach us at at navitasmarketing.com. And Emilie, if people wanted to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Emilie Carlino, and that'd probably be the best way to reach me right now. LinkedIn is probably the social platform that I use the most, or at Emilie Brie on Instagram.
Gotcha. Now, that sounds fantastic. Again, thank you for being here. Kevin, I usually don't ask you for parting words, but we got another minute or two. Is there anything you would like to say to people about relationship building?
Well, we know that Emilie's a big believer in elevator pitches. Are you guys into elevator jokes? You should be, because they're funny on so many levels.
I know you're a dad, Kevin, because that was a dad joke.
Do we have the laughter sound bit ready to go, Zach? Sorry, I should have warned you I was doing that. Do you have the laughter sound bit?
Yeah, no, I didn't cue up the soundtrack this time, but well done.
Make sure you're ready for it next month.
Okay, I will. Folks, we really do appreciate you all for watching. We actually have on our calendar February 17th, we're going to have Chris Giddings, and then we're going to be talking about leveraging LinkedIn for success. Super excited about that chat. Chris is a LinkedIn expert. I'm going to give him that title. So we're going to learn a lot from him and hopefully share some really good techniques for you folks to take a better advantage of your LinkedIn. So again, thank you all for watching. Emilie, thank you for being with us.
Absolutely.
Kevin,
thanks for having me.
thanks for the joke, Kevin,
You're
at the
welcome.
end there. And we'll see you all next month on Thursday Thoughts. Everyone have a great rest of your day.